I never imagined I'd be thankful for a job that felt like it wanted to kill me. But desperation rewires your brain. Just over a month ago, I was flat broke, 3 weeks behind on rent, and chewing on dry cereal I stole from a motel breakfast bar in Greystone, Nevada. My truck was out of gas. My phone plan had lapsed. I didn't even have enough money left for a cup of gas station coffee. That's when I saw the sign taped to the inside of a shuttered pawn shop window. Now hiring, Mart Corp, night shift cashier, 28 out here. No experience required, must be available immediately. I didn't even hesitate. Walked 4 blocks to the address listed and asked to apply in person. Nobody asks why a cashier job pays that much in a town like Greystone. The store was on the outskirts between the empty highway and the chain-link fence of a condemned copper mine. The kind of place where even tumbleweeds avoid rolling by at night. It looked like it hadn't been updated since 1994. The Mart Corp sign buzzed above me. One of the fluorescent letters flickering between life and death. Just a blank, glowing hum that barely illuminated the entrance. Inside, the air was stale, cold, the kind of cold that settled deep in your chest and refused to thaw. The night manager was waiting for me. Tall, silver hair, wore his vest like a burden, a permanent scowl on his face. "You Daniel?" he asked. "Yeah." "Daniel Reyes." "I'm Frank." "You're late." I wasn't. The clock said 9. You're the overnight cashier now. You don't talk to customers unless it's necessary. You take your break at 2. No phones, no headphones. And if you want to survive longer than one night, he trailed off, then handed me a crumpled, folded paper from his back pocket. "Rules. Night shift. Written. Do not acknowledge the man in the red sweater. If he approaches, look down. Don't talk. Don't move. He'll leave. If the radio in the break room starts static at exactly 3, hide in the stock closet. Don't come out until it stops. 3. If you hear a child crying in aisle 4, ignore it. There are no children in the store. 4. If a woman enters covered in blood, do not help her. Don't speak. Don't run. 5. Only take breaks in the camera control room. If another worker asks you to visit the back freezer, decline. We don't have one. 6. Never leave the building during your shift, no matter who calls from outside. 7. If you see another version of yourself, don't interact. Go to the office and lock the door until 4. Never, under any circumstance, break a rule. If you do, you're not just an employee. You're inventory. I looked up at Frank. Is this some kind of hazing thing? His stare didn't change. You'll see. Frank didn't explain much after that. Just walked me past a few key points: bathroom, break room, manager's office, then led me to register 3, the one closest to the store's auto slide doors. "Stay where you can see the front and the security mirror," he said. "And whatever happens, follow the rules." "Seriously though?" I asked, trying to break the tension. The guy in the red sweater? What? Is he some local prankster? Frank didn't laugh. He just gave me a long, exhausted look. He used to work here. The first couple of hours were fine. Quiet. Empty aisles. The occasional distant clang of metal, probably from the ancient HVAC system rattling in the back. I served maybe 2 customers. One guy buying a pack of smokes. Another who muttered to himself and walked away without a receipt. Then at exactly 1, I heard crying. It was faint, soft, like a small child hiccuping through sobs. It came from aisle 4. Rule number 3. I stood up, peeked around the candy rack. The crying grew louder, closer, but I didn't see anyone. I took a slow step back, stomach tightening. Every fiber of me screamed to look to help, but the memory of Frank's voice held me back. There are no children in the store. The crying moved past my register like a ghost made of sound. No breeze, no shadow, just presence. And then it was gone, like someone hit a mute button on reality. I barely noticed when my watch buzzed. 2. Break time. I walked to the camera control room on legs that felt like someone else's. I didn't sit. I just leaned against the wall and stared at the rows of black and white monitors showing a store that suddenly looked too big, too empty. And in monitor 6, There was a flash of red. A man just standing, still as a mannequin, wearing a red sweater. The red sweater man didn't move, not on the monitor. Anyway, he was standing still, facing the entrance like a customer who hadn't yet decided to enter. Except he was too still, too precise, arms hanging loose, shoulders relaxed. His head was tilted just enough to look unnatural, like someone trying to mimic how a person should stand. I blinked. He was gone. The next few minutes dragged like hours. My brain cycled through excuses. Maybe the monitor glitched. Maybe it was a late-night jogger in a bright hoodie. Maybe I imagined it. But a knock at the control room door snapped all that logic in half. 3 gentle taps, then silence. Then another knock, softer, slower. I didn't move, didn't breathe. After a minute, the sound stopped. I waited. Another 2 minutes. Nothing. I stepped out. The hallway was empty. So was the store. Back at my register, I stared at the clock. I remembered the next rule. If the radio in the break room starts static at 3, hide in the storage closet. Don't come out until it stops. I wasn't in the break room. I wasn't anywhere near the radio, but I could hear it buzzing through the speaker overhead. A low crackle at first, like wind against a mic. Then, at exactly 3:00 am, it changed. The static spiked, loud and sharp like a blade dragging across glass. Then came the voices. Not one, not two. Hundreds, all whispering, all at once. I bolted, didn't even try to act cool. I sprinted past the produce section, past aisle 5, toward the employee wing, where the supply closets were stacked beside the old vending machine that hadn't worked in years. The static got louder as I ran. Then it stopped, sudden and total, like a switch had been flipped. I froze in the hallway, too late to hide, too early to be safe. I turned slowly and saw myself, not in a mirror, not in a reflection. Standing in the hallway, less than 10 feet away, was a second version of me. Same hoodie, same hair, same tired eyes, except he was smiling, and I don't smile like that. I opened the nearest door and threw myself into the storage closet, slammed it shut, locked the latch from the inside, then waited. Footsteps approached outside, but they didn't sound like my footsteps. Mine are fast, uneven, a bit heavy on the left from a bad ankle sprain last year. These were precise, robotic, measured. They stopped right outside the closet. Then a soft knock. "Daniel," a voice said. My voice. "Let me in." "It's okay now." The statics stopped. My throat tightened. The rule book never said it would talk. I stayed silent. 10 seconds. 30. A full minute. No more knocking. No footsteps. I was about to exhale when something slid under the door. Just the edge of it. Something thin. Gray. It looked like a finger, bending impossibly sideways, feeling along the floor for purchase. That's when I screamed. I pressed my back against the far wall of the closet, heart in my throat, hands shaking, and then the finger vanished. After 5 minutes, the store speaker gave a soft beep. The static was gone. I counted to 100 before unlocking the door and stepping back into the hallway. Nothing there. No doppelganger, no red sweater man, no voices, just that same awful stillness, the kind of silence that isn't empty, just waiting. I returned to the register, dazed. Somehow, it was 4. No setting. I'd lost more than an hour. I had no memory of it. Frank showed up at 6. Sharp. He said nothing at first, just nodded once, then tossed me a bottle of water from behind the counter. How'd it go? I didn't answer. I didn't have to. He saw it in my face. They only get worse once they know you're here, he said, sitting beside me on the bench near the checkout. It's like you show up on their radar. Some of them can smell new blood, especially if you're marked. What the hell was that thing? I asked. The thing that looked like me. Frank rubbed his hands together slowly. His knuckles were gray and veiny, like him. He'd aged 10 years just from talking about it. Used to be a guy like you. New, nervous. He didn't follow the rule that night. Opened the door, welcomed himself in. Next morning, there were 2 of him working the register. He paused. We buried the real one. Still don't know which. I couldn't respond, could barely breathe. You're doing fine, Daniel, Frank added, standing up. Most quit after the first shift. You didn't. That's something. He left without another word. I stayed seated long after the sun rose, staring at the security feed of aisle 4. There were footprints in the dust, small, child-sized, and they ended directly in front of my register. But there were no prints walking away. I didn't sleep the next day. Even with blackout curtains drawn and my phone off, I couldn't stop hearing it, the static, the crying, my own voice outside the closet door. When I finally did drift off around noon, it wasn't rest. It was like sinking underwater in a dream I couldn't wake from. I saw myself standing in the MartCorp hallway again, but I wasn't moving, wasn't breathing. I was frozen, mannequin still, smiling that same wide, wrong smile. When I jolted awake, the sun was setting. My shirt was soaked through with sweat, and my nails had dug small crescent moons into my palms. I checked the time. Psych. P. Time to get ready. I could have quit. I could have packed my bag, left Greystone, and never looked back. But some sick, obsessive curiosity held me in place, like I needed to know what was really going on inside that store. Or maybe I just didn't have anywhere else to go. Frank didn't say anything when I showed up again. Just gave me a nod like, so you're still alive. Shift started at 10. Zeruropi. By midnight, the store was its usual dead silent. I did my best to focus on busy work stocking batteries, organizing impulse buys near the register. I was about to open a new roll of receipt paper when I heard it. A soft knock at the sliding front door. 3 gentle taps. Then a voice. Daniel, it's me, baby. It's your mom. My blood turned to ice. That voice, that warm, tired tone, it was her. Exactly her. But that was impossible. My mom had died 3 years ago. Lung cancer. I held her hand during the final breath. So who or what was outside? I took a cautious step toward the glass doors. They were fogged slightly, like someone had exhaled just inches away. Honey, open up. I just want to see you. Every instinct screamed don't, but my legs kept moving. I stopped 3 feet from the glass. On the other side was a silhouette, feminine, shoulders hunched slightly, hair in a bun. I couldn't make out a face, but the shape, it could have been her. You don't have to be scared, she said again. I'm so proud of you. Her tone cracked on the last word, and a hot tear slid down my cheek before I even realized it. The rules flashed through my head. Never leave the building during your shift, no matter who calls from outside. I whispered the words under my breath like a prayer. Never leave, never leave. You always do this, the voice said suddenly sharper now. Colder? You always disappoint me. The shape outside leaned closer. I still couldn't see the face, but the shape of it was wrong. The neck was too long. The chin didn't end where it should have, like someone had sculpted a human head from memory but missed the details. Then I noticed the hand pressed against the glass. It had 7 fingers. I stumbled back, tripped on the receipt printer, hit the floor hard. By the time I stood up, the figure was gone. Just a foggy outline of a palm print on the glass. 5 long fingers and 2 smaller ones at the wrist. At 2. Frank met me in the break room. He sat down with his usual sigh, like he'd aged another year since the last shift. They're getting curious, he said, lighting a cigarette despite the no smoking sign. Why me? You're new. Fresh meat. Not broken in yet. He paused. They feed off whatever's unresolved. That's how they pick their mask. It ain't your mom. It's just wearing her voice. Why does it want me to come outside? Frank exhaled slowly. Because if you open that door, you're not you anymore. That hit me harder than it should have. Then what am I? Frank looked me over, like he was checking for cracks in a glass. Still human for now. By 3. Gocha. The static didn't come. Neither did the red sweater man. Instead, something new happened. A child's voice different from before called from the canned goods aisle. Mister, I'm lost. I can't find my brother. Soft, fragile, almost trembling. But I knew better now. I stayed at my register. Didn't move. Didn't even blink. But that didn't stop the thing from trying. From aisle to aisle, the voice followed me, always calling, "Can you help me? Please. Why are you ignoring me?" The last one was screamed inches from my ear. I turned around on instinct, but no one was there. Just cold air and the smell of copper and dirt. When 6 lit up, finally came, I clocked out and walked out into the desert dawn, feeling like I'd aged 5 years. Frank stayed behind, staring at the monitor. He looked over his shoulder and said, "Next time, bring salt." What? Just trust me. Salt. A circle of it around your feet when the lights flicker. I didn't know if Frank was serious about the salt or just messing with me. But when a guy who survived 20 years of night shifts tells you to bring something that might keep you alive, you bring the damn salt. I stopped at a gas station on the way to work and bought 3 bulk containers of table salt. The cashier didn't even blink. He just looked at my sunken eyes, the burn on my left wrist, the dirt under my nails, and scanned them wordlessly. By the time I got to the store, the desert sky was already sliding from orange to navy. I parked under the busted streetlight and sat in my car for a while, staring at the double doors. I thought I saw something move behind the frosted glass. But when I got out, it was just my own reflection staring back, except it blinked and I hadn't. Frank didn't show up that night. I messaged him. No reply. His truck wasn't in the back lot either. There was no rule for this. Know what to do if the only guy who knows what's going on ghosts you on your 3rd shift. So I walked in, locked the doors behind me, and placed my 3 containers of salt on the register counter like they were relics from some exorcism ritual. The first hour passed in silence. I restocked some gum, tidied the bottled water display, tried to pretend I was just working a normal shift. The lights flickered. At first, just a single buzz. The bulbs above aisle 7 dimmed, then flared, then cut out. I stood frozen by the soda display, holding a can of Sprite like a weapon. Then more lights went. Aisle 6, aisle 3, the freezer section. Each one popped with a faint electric hum, like the air was being sucked from the room. By 2, 20. Only one light remained, the single bulb above the customer service desk, right above me. And then the voice returned. "Daniel." It didn't sound like my mom this time. It didn't sound like anything human. I ripped open the salt, hands shaking. I poured a wide, messy circle around myself like a kid playing with sugar but desperate. I sat down in the center, knees drawn up, eyes fixed on the dark store in front of me. I couldn't see past the first few shelves. The light didn't reach that far, but I could hear it. Footsteps, heavy, limping, off rhythm, like someone dragging one leg. Then came the breathing, thick, wet, wrong, like someone had lungs full of water. I wanted to close my eyes, but I couldn't. If I blinked, I knew it would be closer. The sound moved between aisles. Closer, closer. Something brushed against a wire rack and sent a bag of pretzels tumbling to the ground. Then, a shape emerged just beyond the salt circle. At first glance, it looked like a man. Jeans, boot, a flannel shirt. But the head was all wrong. A solid black void, like someone had smeared ink over its face. No eyes, no mouth, no features, just black. And it stood still, watching. I held my breath. It took one step forward and hit the edge of the salt. Its foot screeched against the invisible barrier like a fork dragged across tile. It reeled back, then hissed, not like a snake, like a dying thing pretending to be human. Then it spoke in a dozen voices at once. "Let us in." I didn't answer. Couldn't. My hands gripped the salt bottle like it was holy. The thing paced around the edge of the circle, clockwise, never stepping inside. Then it raised one hand and pointed. The light above me began to buzz louder. It was trying to blow the bulb. If it went out, I'd be surrounded in pitch black. The salt wouldn't mean anything then. I lunged out of the circle and threw the full container at the figure. Salt exploded across its chest like shrapnel. It shrieked an awful, screeching howl and fell backward, vanishing between the shelves. The light snapped back on. Every aisle lit in unison. Silence returned like a door slammed shut, and I stood there, alone, panting, in a wrecked store with salt on my shoes and blood in my ears from the noise. It's 6-0. The sun rose and Frank still hadn't shown. I just whipped up what I could, clocked out, sat in my car and stared at my phone. One new voicemail. It was Frank. His voice was strained, shaking. Don't come tomorrow. Daniel, don't come back. They know you now, and they're not gonna stop. The message ended with the sound of breathing. Not his, not mine, something else entirely. I didn't sleep at all that day, not a minute. I sat in my kitchen with every light on, a coffee mug glued to my hand, and 3 empty salt bottles lined up on the counter like war trophies. Frank's message looped in my head. Don't come tomorrow. They know you now. Too late. They'd already brushed against me, spoken to me, seen me, and now the store wasn't the only haunted place. At 2:37 p.m., my phone buzzed. Blocked number. I let it go to voicemail, but this time they left a message, a voice. Calm, corporate, Mr. Reyes. This is Human Resources at Mart Corp. We need to conduct a follow-up on the damage report from last night's shift. You are scheduled to meet with Regional Liaison Mark Farrell at 4. Zozobe. Sharp. Address has been sent to your email. Failure to appear will result in termination. The message ended with an unnatural click. My stomach turned. I hadn't filed any damage report. The address led me to a small office suite in a strip mall 30 minutes outside Greystone. The kind of place where businesses go to die. Empty units, torn signage, cracked asphalt. The Mart Corp logo was taped in the window of Unit 4B. The glass was tinted. I walked in and was hit with the smell of lemon cleaner and mildew. A woman at the desk, red blazer, pale eyes, gestured toward the back. Mr. Farrell is expecting you. No smile, no eye contact, just automaton energy. The office was dimly lit. A single desk, a single chair, and a man sitting behind it in a gray suit that looked like it hadn't been worn by a human in years. He had no reflection in the glass behind him. None. Mr. Reyes, he said. Thank you for being punctual. He motioned for me to sit. I didn't want to, but I did. We're reviewing your compatibility with Mart Corp's Level 3 properties. Level 3, properties that require special clearance. Sites built over high-density exposure zones. Sites that interact with the thin places. He smiled. Too wide. We've identified you as a resilient asset. I tried to stand. I didn't agree to this. I didn't sign anything. His voice dropped. You walked through the doors. That's consent. He pulled a folder from his drawer and slid it toward me. Inside, grainy black and white photos. One of me huddled in the salt circle. One of me frozen in the aisle with the thing reaching for my shoulder. One of me at my car. Phone to my ear, taken from high angles, like from the ceiling. I hadn't noticed any cameras. These aren't public records. They are now. Then he leaned forward, almost whispering. Do you know what Mart Corp stands for? Mr. Reyes. I didn't answer. Management and Resource Terminal. MART. A system of outposts, portals, watch points. He tilted his head. Between your world and what presses against it. The air went cold. Some of our locations are compromised. Yours, Greystone 471, is very compromised. I swallowed. What do you want from me? Just this. Follow the rules. Keep working. Report anything anomalous. And if I quit, he smiled again, but now his teeth were longer, sharper. Then you're no longer on the schedule, and off-schedule people don't last. I left the building at 4:20 XP. The receptionist was gone. So was her desk. The unit was empty. Just 4 blank walls and a water-stained carpet, like nothing had ever been there. Back in my car, my phone buzzed again. Text from Frank. We're not alone tonight. Bring extra salt. That was all. Just like that, I knew I was going back. Not because I had to, but because they weren't done with me yet. Frank was already waiting by the back door when I pulled up. He looked worse than the last time I saw him. Paler, eyed and sunken like he hadn't slept in days. He didn't even glance at me as I stepped out of the car. Told you not to come back, he muttered, unlocking the security gate. They summoned me, I replied. They always do. Once you're tagged, you're on their grid. He handed me a new sheet of rules. not typed, handwritten, crumpled, and longer than the last. Additional protocol, Site 471. If the freezer alarm rings but the door is shut, do not open it. If you hear your own voice calling from a different aisle, leave the store immediately. Between 3:20 and 3:35, do not answer any phone calls, even from known numbers. If the manager visits tonight, stand still, eyes down, and say nothing. Never speak about these rules inside the store. Frank saw me reading, then added, the manager doesn't show up often, but when he does, people who look at him go missing. Has he ever looked at you? Frank didn't answer. He just turned and disappeared into the stockroom. The first hour passed with routine inventory, almost peaceful, if not for the tension crushing my chest. At 1:41, I heard the freezer alarm. It beeped 4 times, long, shrill. The digital readout above the walk-in glowed, but the door, it was still sealed shut. Condensation clung to the handle, but the latch hadn't been touched. Still, I backed away. Didn't open it, didn't even breathe too loud. By 2:20, the lights dimmed same as before, but they didn't go out. Instead, the radio behind the counter clicked on by itself. Static, then soft jazz, then my voice. Daniel, can you hear me? It was exactly my voice, down to the dry rasp in the throat. I'm trapped. ISIL 9, please help me. I froze. Rule 2, if you hear your own voice, leave the store. I grabbed my keys, ran for the front, and slam. The front doors were sealed shut, not locked, sealed. The handles wouldn't budge, like someone welded them together. Then came the footsteps again, but this time they were lighter, not dragging, deliberate, calm. They stopped just behind the cereal aisle. I held my breath, crouched low, and slowly peeked around the shelf. A tall figure in a red vest was standing in the middle of the aisle. Not a customer, not Frank. Too still, too flat, and on his name tag, manager. I remembered Rule 4. Stand still, eyes down. Say nothing. He hadn't seen me. I ducked back, stared at the floor, and didn't move. He walked by. I saw his shoes, black loafers polished to a mirror shine, and the cuffs of pants that didn't bend like fabric. They rippled like plastic in motion. The air behind him smelled like plastic and burnt hair. He stopped beside me and whispered, "One of them has your face now." My pulse hammered. I didn't speak, didn't move. After what felt like a full minute, he walked on and disappeared around the corner. Frank found me in the loading bay 10 minutes later, crouched behind a pallet of dish soap. He tossed me a bottle of water and said, "You met the manager, didn't you?" He said something took my face. Frank nodded grimly. The store replicates, it mimics not just voices, but people, memories. You're not just seeing things now, you're splitting. He pointed to the security feed monitor. It was grainy and gray, but I could clearly see the front aisle, and standing there was me. Exact clothes, same face, just smiling too wide. I stared at the security monitor, barely breathing. The man on the screen, the thing tilted his head slowly, like he could feel me watching, and then he waved. It was subtle, a twitch of the fingers, nothing more, but it was my wave. The casual half gesture I used when seeing someone across the parking lot. "That's not me," I whispered. Frank didn't respond. He just grabbed the remote and killed the feed. "We don't watch it too long," he muttered. "It watches back." The rest of the night blurred together in half-shaken inventory, counts and constant glances over my shoulder. No more static, no more voices, just silence, until 5. When the doors unsealed, not unlocked, unsealed, I heard it, like a vacuumed hiss as the barrier lifted. Frank and I walked out together, the first time we ever did. The air was sharp and cold, but it felt real. I gulped it down like I'd been underwater all night. Frank lit a cigarette with hands that shook. "You've seen it now," he said between puffs. "The copy, so what happens next?" He stared ahead. "Depends, if it's just watching. You're lucky if it tries to replace you. Then what? Then you're already dead, and we're talking to the wrong guy." He didn't say it like a joke. He said it like a man who'd seen it happen. That morning, I didn't go home. Instead, I drove out of Greystone. Just kept going down I-80 west until the MartCorp storefronts faded behind desert scrub. I stopped at a diner in a nameless town. Ate eggs. Tried to breathe. My hands wouldn't stop trembling. At the gas station next door, I stepped into the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. I leaned in close. My eyes looked tired, but normal. My hair still had the scar from that childhood bike wreck. I raised my hand. So did the reflection, but just before I pulled back, it blinked a full second later than I did. I staggered out of the bathroom, heart hammering. Drove back to Greystone. The entire ride, I kept checking the rearview mirror, not for cops, for myself, to make sure the man in the reflection kept pace. That night, I showed up at MartCorp 10 minutes early. Frank wasn't there. His truck was gone. His locker was empty. A new name had been scribbled on the schedule in red ink. Carlton S. I didn't know any Carlton, and I knew Frank never quit. When I tried to call him, my phone rang once, and the voice on the other end said, "He's not yours to reach anymore." Click. Deadline. I was alone that shift. The lights flickered constantly, but didn't go out. The freezers hissed. Voices echoed from the back aisles, always just out of view. And at 3:21, my phone lit up with a call from Mom. My real mom passed away 2 years ago. I didn't answer. The ringing stopped after 5 tones. Then the intercom crackled on. "Daniel, it's me. I'm so cold. Please, baby, pick up." The sound of her voice almost broke me, but I held the rule in my head like a mantra. Don't answer any calls between 3:20 and 3:34. The rest of the night passed in a blur of shadows and restraint, but just before dawn, the lights pulsed once, and when they returned, there were 2 sets of my footprints in the tile dust by aisle 5. One set led back to the employee break room. The other led deeper into the store. I knew I should have ignored the footprints. I knew the rules didn't say anything about following trails or even acknowledging them, but something about those perfect treads matching my boots, stride for stride, called to me. One led to the break room. The other vanished between aisles, slipping into a part of the store that, to my knowledge, didn't even exist. And yet, it did. A few feet past the gardening section, where the tile met a stretch of warped plywood, there it was. A trapdoor. Uneven. Paint chipped. I'd worked in this store 3 weeks and never noticed it. Now, somehow, the footprint trail led directly to it. It had no handle, no latch, but it opened with a hollow creak when I touched it, and beneath it, stairs, concrete, descending into pitch black. I should have called someone, but no one would come. So I grabbed a flashlight, looped my box cutter on my belt, and stepped down. The air was heavy, thicker, smelled of rust and wet cardboard. The walls were concrete, covered in flaking white paint. On the second step, the door slammed shut behind me. Not just closed, sealed, same as the front doors. My flashlight flickered once, then held. The stairs went on longer than they should have. By step 30, I realized I wasn't under the store anymore. I was beneath something older, bigger, and wrong. My ears rang from the pressure, like I was crossing into a place I shouldn't belong. At the bottom was a metal hallway with fluorescent lights that buzzed low and deep like whale songs slowed down. Every 20 feet or so, there was a door, steel, numbered. E001, E002, E003, all locked. Until I reached E008, it was open. Inside, the air changed, warmer, humming. File cabinets lined the walls, rusted, some dented, one still padlocked. On a table sat a single binder, stamped in faded red. Employee records, incident class D. I opened it. Inside were personnel sheets, photos stapled to the top corners, rows of handwriting, lists of shift reports, psychological evaluations, termination codes. And I recognized one of the names, Frank Holloway. Date of hire, 2004. Termination status, non-resolved anomaly. In the remarks column, subject began mimicking self-awareness. Escalated to full identity fracture, sealed per containment protocol. Below it, someone had written in pen, still glimpsed on night shifts. Avoid engagement. My legs weakened. I slid to the floor. holding the binder like it might explain everything. But then the humming stopped, and a voice behind me said, "You weren't supposed to find this." I turned slowly. There, in the hallway, was a man wearing my face. Same shirt, same hair, same tired eyes, but he was smiling wider than I ever could. And his teeth, too many of them. "You're not me," I whispered. He grinned. "Not yet." I didn't wait to see what the thing wearing my face would do next. I ran, bolted from room E08, binder still clutched to my chest. Behind me, I heard it follow those same boots hitting the concrete floor in perfect sync with mine, like it had studied me down to my weight and rhythm. The hallway stretched longer than I remembered. Each flickering fluorescent overhead buzzed harder as I passed, like the building itself was warning me I wasn't supposed to be here. I made a sharp left into an unmarked passage. Wrong move! The lights above me snapped out all at once, one by one in a ripple of pop, pop, above, complete darkness. Then came the breathing, not mine, wet, shuddering, deliberate. It whispered, "Let me be you." I backed into a corner, dragging in air that tasted of mold and static, and then miraculously my flashlight flickered back to life. The beam cut through the dark. There was nothing in front of me, but in the dusty concrete beneath my feet, two sets of footprints, one leading in, one leading out. I followed the latter, desperate. The air grew thinner the farther I went, the walls beginning to hum in strange low frequencies that made my teeth vibrate. At the end of the hall was a narrow, vertical shaft and old service elevator, door wide open, hanging cable swinging, and written across the wall in what looked like faded grease pencil, Level F, Staff Termination Unit. Below it, scrawled more recently, in red marker, "If you see yourself, run." I climbed up, fingers shaking on the cables, boots scraping metal rungs half rotted with rust. From somewhere below, I heard me again. "You can't outrun yourself, Daniel." I kept climbing, didn't look back. Couldn't, because I knew if I saw it again, really looked, I wouldn't be able to tell the difference anymore. At the top, a hatch, rusty, jammed, but it gave with a groan. I pulled myself through, into the walk-in freezer of the Mart Corp store, the one that had alarmed the night before. It was dark, cold, and filled with unopened meat boxes. I stumbled through the door and out onto the tile floor. I had looped, somehow, back to the beginning. The store was dim, quiet. The early light of dawn was just beginning to touch the windows. Everything seemed normal, except for the man sitting behind the register. He looked up at me and smiled. It was me, but older, slightly, a faint scar on the left temple I didn't recognize. "About time," he said. "We've got another shift in 2 nights. Better rest up." I blinked. "What?" He slid a fresh copy of the rules across the counter. This version was longer. Typed, laminated. Rev 7, clearance. Internal use only. At the bottom, copies must not interact with originals outside of store premises. He gave me a wink, and just like that, he was gone, vanished between blinks. When I stepped out of Mart Corp that morning, the world felt thinner, like a stage set. I blinked against the rising sun, letting it warm my face. Just a few hours ago, I was crawling through tunnels beneath the store, being hunted by a thing wearing my skin. Now the parking lot was full of birdsong and wind. Too full, too loud. I drove home, gripping the steering wheel like it might dissolve if I let go. Everything looked the same. Same rows of cracked sidewalks, same faded Gold's Tire and auto sign at the intersection. But the second I pulled into my driveway, my stomach dropped, because parked out front was my car. Identical make. Same rust spot on the rear bumper, and through the blinds of the living room window, I saw a shadow move. Someone was already in my house. I didn't go inside. I sat in my car until my legs stopped shaking. Then I drove 3 blocks down and parked behind the Shell station. I used the burner phone I kept in my glove compartment and called Jen. My ex? I shouldn't have, but I needed to talk to someone who knew me. It rang twice. Hello. Her voice. Alive. Human. Jen. It's me. Silence. Then, "I'm sorry. Who is this?" I almost threw the phone. I didn't respond. Just hung up and sat there. Breathing hard. She knew my voice. She had to, unless someone else had already called her with it. That night, I checked into a Motel 6 outside town using the name on an old fake ID. I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw myself watching from the corner, just standing, no blinking, no breath, just waiting. When I returned to MartCorp the next night, there was a new man at the register, older, grizzled. Name tag read, "Rob, you must be the new kid," he said, giving me a once-over. "I've worked here for almost a month." He blinked, confused. "Don't think so. You're on the new roster. They said last guy didn't make it." "What guy?" He just shrugged. "Corporate doesn't give names, only rule sheets." He handed me a fresh one. Different again. 7 new rules added. Some crossed out. One line had been highlighted. "If you see yourself outside of this building, do not engage. You cannot win." The new rule sheet had one key difference. It knew what had happened underground. It knew about the copy, and it didn't pretend anymore. The MartCorp handbook had evolved from bizarre superstition into something more clinical, strategic. One line at the bottom stood out in bold red. "This list is a living document. Obey accordingly." Rob clocked out at 10:55 p.m. sharp. By 11, no one. I was alone. I walked the aisles mechanically, stocking toilet paper like it mattered, all while keeping my eye on the camera monitors. Nothing strange yet, until 1:43 a.m. That's when the shelves began to breathe. I'm not exaggerating. The entire paper goods aisle rippled like a lung. Bounty and Charmaine flexed inward and outward in slow, wet expansion. Then the voice came. "Daniel." It wasn't from an aisle. It came through the speaker system. But the intercom had been disabled since the copy incident. "Let's switch now. You're tired. I can live your life better." I dropped the pack of toilet paper and backed into the frozen food section. I glanced down at the rule sheet. Rule 12 had been added. It read, "If addressed over the intercom after 1:40 a.m., do not respond. Silence is survival." I clamped my mouth shut. The voice kept coaxing. "She didn't recognize you. Did she?" My heart slammed against my ribs. Jen remembered me just fine. I bolted toward the break room. It was the only place in the building with a secondary power switch. If I could cut the internal audio system, maybe I could shut it up. I nearly made it before the lights above me blinked out. Blackness. A breath pressed against my neck. "Let me wear your name." I slammed into the break room, yanked the emergency override box, and flipped every breaker in the row. The lights flickered back on. The voice vanished. I collapsed into the supply chair, sweat pouring down my face. I stared at the CCTV feeds, at cameras 04. I saw me standing at the front door, hands at his sides, staring into the lens. I leaned in. The copy tilted its head, mocking, smiling. I pulled out my phone, took a screenshot, sent it to Rob. 30 seconds later, he responded, "Don't open the door. That's not you. You already know that." Another message followed. "Check the camera timestamp." I did. It read 6:17 a.m., but the store clock said 3:12 a.m. It was in the future. I stared at the timestamp. 7 a.m. The footage was crystal clear. The man at the front door or the thing wearing me, stood motionless, staring directly into the camera. The part that made my skin crawl. His expression changed a split second before mine did, like he was reacting to my thoughts, preempting them. I rewound the footage again and again, desperate to find the glitch. But there wasn't one. It wasn't a loop. It wasn't playback. It was live. A live feed from a moment that hadn't happened yet. I sent Rob another message. "The cameras are showing the future." No reply. I tried calling, straight to voicemail. Then another message came through from an unknown number. "You've already opened the door. Don't do it again." I dropped the phone like it was on fire. Because I hadn't opened the door. Not yet. But someone or something believed I had. I turned back to the monitors, hands shaking. Now, on camera 03, the stockroom, I saw myself again, sitting on a crate, mouth open, dead, eyes blackened. That timestamp, 29 a.m. I ran straight to the stockroom. The crates were there. So was the chair. But it was empty. I wasn't there. Not yet. I slammed the door shut, and dragged a filing cabinet in front of it, heart pounding in my throat. Then I saw the mirror. A full-length one propped behind a stack of bulk detergent pallets. Where had that come from? It wasn't here yesterday. I stepped closer, and that's when I realized the reflection wasn't mine. Same body, same uniform, but the face, smiling, teeth a little too perfect, and the eyes voids, depthless. It raised its hand in a wave. I didn't move. Still, it waved. I lunged forward and shattered the mirror with a steel mop handle. It exploded into pieces, but not before I saw one last flicker. Me at the front door again, and the clock behind me. 6, 7 turn. I backed away, breathing like I'd just outrun a pack of wolves. Then the PA system clicked on again. Daniel. Static. Time doesn't work the same in here anymore. I tore the breaker box from the wall. Sparks burst. Lights dimmed. And still, my reflection smiled from every shard of glass on the floor. 3:33 a.m. That's when the lights shut off. Not flickered. Not dimmed. Vanished. The store fell into a dead, opaque, black like the world had been erased in a single blink. Even the humming fluorescence that always buzzed. Even when broken gone, the silence was total. Then the rule sheet buzzed in my back pocket. Not my phone. The rule sheet. I pulled it out with trembling hands. The laminated plastic glowed faintly, and a new rule appeared, carved into the surface like a fresh wound. Rule 17. Do not break a rule unless instructed by the store. You are now instructed. Break 1. I read it 3 times. Break a rule. That was suicide, wasn't it? I moved toward the stockroom again, gripping a flashlight that now sputtered with each step. That's when I heard the crying. Soft, muffled. A child. The child. I rose mid-stride. I had avoided her every shift. She was the first rule. Ignore the crying child. I stared down at the rule sheet. It shimmered again. Rule 1. Ignore the crying child. This rule is now suspended. My pulse spiked. I whispered, "You've gotta be kidding me." The crying grew louder, more urgent. I followed the sound, gripping the mop handle like a weapon. At the far end of aisle 12, behind a wall of stacked pet food, I saw her. Small, barefoot, dirty. Her eyes were hollow. Her mouth never quite moved with the sound of her sobbing. She just looked at me, and the crying came from her face, but not through her mouth, like it was playing from a speaker inside her skull. "Please," she whimpered. "My mommy's in the freezer. She's cold." I stepped forward. 1 step. 2. I could feel my limbs locking up, like I was being magnetized to her, like gravity shifted with every inch closer. But I had to break the rule. I was instructed. "What's your name?" I asked. The crying stopped. She blinked. For the first time, her voice came from inside her mouth. "You passed." The lights above exploded back to life. A siren sounded overhead. The break room door swung open with a metallic screech, and the walls began to shift. Literally, the aisles rotated like gears, sealing off exit paths. The floor tiles beneath me became translucent, and below them, I saw a massive, churning void. Not a basement, not dirt, not pipes, but black space, spinning, breathing. "You were never meant to follow the rules forever," said the girl, now smiling, just long enough for the gate to open. A camera above me turned slowly, then snapped to attention, red light blinking. I looked down at the rule sheet. Every rule was scratched out except one. Just one line remained, glowing red. Final rule. Return to where it started. Leave the copy behind. I stood frozen in the pet food aisle, surrounded by broken glass and rearranged walls. That little girl, whatever she was, had vanished, but the final rule pulsed like blood on the rule sheet. Return to where it started. Leave the copy behind. Behind me, the aisles groaned as if the building itself was alive. The path to the break room had reshaped like the store wanted me to go down there. So I did. The emergency hatch to the sublevel was open again, but something had changed. The steel ladder was rusted, not in its old kind of way, but more like it had been decaying for centuries. As I climbed down, the air thickened with rot and static, and beneath the stink of mold and iron was a familiar scent, burned hair, just like the first night. The hallway below was longer than I remembered, much longer. It twisted like a serpent through the earth, lined with flickering bulbs and warped metal. Then I saw him, the copy, sitting cross-legged at the far end of the corridor, still wearing my face, still smiling with my teeth. But those eyes had become entirely black, like obsidian marble sunk into his skull. I knew you'd come back, it said in my voice. You always do. I stepped closer, rule sheet in one hand, a crowbar in the other. I'm not here to play your game. It stood slowly, bones cracked as it rose. But you played it, Daniel. Every shift, every rule, you obeyed. I tightened my grip on the crowbar. Not anymore. It laughed. They never tell you what the last rule means, do they? Suddenly, it charged, not like a man, but like a puppet yanked forward by invisible strings, its mouth split wide, jaw unhinging far too low. I swung the crowbar with everything I had. It screamed not from pain, but in a voice I knew wasn't mine or his. A deeper voice, older. The ground split open beneath us, and we fell. The void below wasn't a pit, it was a place. A room made of mirrored shelves and silent mannequins, thousands of them frozen in retail poses, each one wearing a name tag that said Daniel. They turned slowly as I landed, watching me. Then, one by one, they whispered, "Leave the copy. Take your place." I was surrounded. I looked down at the rule sheet in my hand. It had changed again. Final rule. You may go if you leave one behind. Choose. The copy dragged itself from the hole, crawling toward me, broken but still smiling. You leave me here and you're free, but you won't be you anymore. I backed away, heart hammering. There was no good answer. If I left the copy here, what did I take back? If I stayed, would I become the next rule? Then I saw it etched into one of the mannequin shelves. Not a name, but a line. J. Moss, Night Manager, 1974. And below that, he left. But something followed. The mirrored mannequins closed in. Each whispered in different tones, some childlike, some elderly, some in a perfect imitation of my own voice. You're not the first to choose, you're not the first to break. Leave it behind. Daniel, that's all they want. The copy slithered across the glassy floor. Broken, bleeding, smiling. It looked up at me with my own face, one eye dangling like a marble on a wet string. You think you're still real? It asked. You think there's only one of you? I raised the crowbar, shaking. You're not me, aren't I? I looked around again at the name tags on the mannequins. Hundreds of them, all Daniel. Some dated, some newer, a few with no dates at all. All of them copies. And in the center of the chamber, I saw it. A glowing exit sign, freestanding. It had no walls, no doorway, just the sign, lit red like a wound. I stepped toward it, but the ground pulsed beneath me like skin. The rule sheet in my hand turned to ash. No more guidance, no more structure, only choice. You leave me here, the copy rasped, and they'll never know. You'll go back. You'll live, you'll forget, but I won't. It reached for me, not to attack, but to plead. I froze, because I realized something in that moment. The rules weren't meant to protect me. They were meant to contain the thing pretending to be me. Every night shift, every list, every warning, they were barriers, rituals, chants to keep the door from opening all the way. And now, I had become the final hinge. I turned back to the mannequins. What happens if I don't leave either of us? They didn't answer, but they smiled. All of them, At once, I grabbed the copy, dragged him toward the center. The exit glowed brighter. The floor trembled. The shelves collapsed outward into the void. He struggled, but not violently. He whispered, "You've already done this. This is the third time. You just never remember." I shoved him toward the light. But then I stopped, 'cause in that glowing red, I saw myself, not a reflection, not a vision. Me standing there, mouth open, mouthing the same words I was about to say. I made my choice. I whispered, "Stay," and I let go of the crowbar. I woke up in my bed, alarms ringing, morning sun breaking through my window. My phone buzzed. Text from MartCorp HR. "We regret to inform you the night shift position at MartCorp has been permanently dissolved. Thank you for your service." I checked my hands. fingers intact, skin pale, but the mirror in the hallway didn't reflect me, not quite. My reflection was a step behind, and when I walked away, it stayed just a moment longer than it should have.